here. It's gonna be good. In the bottom right, we have wishing his opponent GLHF, the winner of the first game, loser of the second. We have MrBailey. In top left, we have his opponents. Picking up the second game, tying things up 1-1, we have the blue Terran, Manderson, aka 28. All right, then. So, this has been pretty interesting. Both players have essentially used the exact same tactic to kill each other. not quite executed the exact same way, of course. That fast expand from Manderson turning out to be very successful, getting him the economy edge he needed. If he was only on one base for as long as he was the last time, I wonder how things would have gone. I bet you he does it again here. I gotta say that when you're in a situation like this and you find something that works, your opponent doesn't necessarily have a lot of time to really think about it, and it's not unusual to do the same thing over again. But we can see that these two guys are actually very similar players. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes. Barracks coming down at the front, neither player doing anything particularly crazy at the moment. MrBailey back in his base is grabbing that good old 12. No, actually grabbing his gas somewhat earlier this time. He has something different in mind, or if that's just a slight error. Probably going to be grabbing that Reaper. It looks like 28 is also grabbing relatively early gas here. At least maybe around 13. Very interesting to see if he goes for the Reaper strategy on this map as well. This map, a little bit unlike the ones we've seen so far, has a very narrow entrance for Reapers. They can really only come up on this side of the base here that you can see where Zero is currently looking. That space down at the top here, this is a 2-story ledge, so they can't come up this way. They have to bounce up into the natural and then up into the main base. This makes it a little bit easier to actually deny scouting as the game goes on. And we can see that MrBailey sticking with what works, grabbing that Reaper, scouting off. See if it works a little bit better. Works out a little bit better than it did last time. Not last time, sorry. The first game, where it just kind of sort of blown to smithereens by a siege tank. It actually went fantastic for him last game. He was able to take out, I believe, 3 workers with the Reaper and escape with it alive. Ever so barely. So my voice has been fine, really. Good to hear that. Well, at least what I did during the break should be able to guarantee that it stays okay. I feel like leaving that computer on while I'm doing this is just inviting disaster. For whatever reason, I think a lot of its automatic updaters tend to kick in the middle of the afternoon or when I'm doing this instead of in the middle of the night. Yeah, I don't get it either, but it happens. So MrBailey is able to jump up into the middle of the base, and there's 2 guys actually already hanging out by the Reaper line. They respond to that Reaper right away. Now the important thing, okay, front to the back, wants to get that scout off, does see the barracks and factory building. Well, don't know if he was able to click on that, and it looks like the Reaper is just barely going to get away. Now, if that one Marine had been sent slightly more south, he actually would have been able to snipe him out. And nice control from MrBailey keeping that one alive. For now, it's probably just going to stick down there for a while and watch for an early expansion. Though, given what he's already scouted, he knows that that's not going to be coming. He sees where most of his opponent's money is going already. And let's see how he reacts back home. So far, grabbing a reactor marauder. And pretty much what we're going to see from here, most likely, is he going to go for his own expansion or get some additional production? Okay, going up to the starport. So it looks like he wants to get up to medevacs before he goes for this base. Okay. So not the fast expand that we saw Manderson go for last time. Looks like that was just something he wanted to have in his back pocket in case he needed it. And honestly, both players are basically doing about the same thing. Kind of similar worker accounts, except that I think MrBailey has invested into tech a little bit faster. Stim coming out, so he's going to have that advantage. Whereas Manderson has gone for a little bit more just pure needs. Second gas is just about to finish as well. Factory, it's not sure what this is doing. It's always interesting when you're going for a bio-army, this factory does tend to turn into just kind of like the biggest overlord you've ever seen, which is like, if I recall, these things are incredibly fast. Yeah, they move at a speed of 0.94, which I believe is faster than an Overlord. So, eh, not blistering speed from the comparison of any other unit, but I gotta tell you, um, it matters in the middle of a fight, that's for sure. That thing just kind of gets up in your face, and then it's away from you, and it doesn't die. It takes forever. It actually is a very effective way to absorb shots in the middle of a fight. Reaper's still hanging out in the natural here, still seeing that there's no expansion. It's got to have MrBailey a little suspicious. Now, there's one thing about drops we really need to keep in mind. Drops are much less effective when a person only has one base. The point of the drop is to get in, do some damage, and get out. There's only one place to protect. The army's going to be right there in your face when you try to drop. And unfortunately, that can be pretty bad. So, most likely, given this, looks like Manderson's going to say, I don't care. He might just use this to check for the expansion, go for the drop himself, but as long as MrBailey doesn't move out here, he should be able to defend this fairly well. Might lose this, okay, for a second I thought the 4 supply depots were command center. I'm like, what? I don't ever remember seeing him make one of those. Okay, here comes the drop. Or not. Drop is just kind of hanging out right up there. This is something you see happen sometimes where people send it across the map and are like, okay, I'll look back in a second. They go back to macro, and then I'm sure he'll take notice of the drop in just a moment here. Meanwhile, over in the base here, we can see that MrBailey's 4 medevacs are now done, and this hesitation from Manderson could turn out to be the worst thing possible to happen to MrBailey if he actually picks up. No, he does not. Here comes the drop. Drop goes down the middle of the base. Unfortunately, dropping under siege tank fire. So one of the red flames picking up and getting out of there. Okay, didn't kill anything. Ouch. I think he might have killed one of the army units, but didn't do any damage to the line, and he has made MrBailey parent. What that did accomplish was some scouting. He did see that his opponent is effectively doing the same basic thing he is. So he shouldn't be too worried about desperately getting up the base. And he actually just scanned the natural as well of MrBailey. So he does know, I believe, that there's no expansion there. And now we have kind of a stalemate for the moment. You can see that a command center is going up the wall here. This is actually a very interesting placement. That traps the Reaper if it jumps up at the red angle. And MrBailey's picking up for his signature drop. As I said before, easy to deflect when it's on one base. So let's see if the same thing happens to MrBailey that just happened to Manderson, or if it goes any worse. If neither player really takes any damage from this, it ultimately won't mean too much as far as the game's progression is concerned. However, this attempt to go for a command center does mean that his army is continuing to develop. So MrBailey, and this time checking. Okay, no completed command center, so MrBailey's army money hasn't gone to that, though it could have easily given the amount of commands here. Huge number of medevacs moving out with this army. It looks like he's actually going to go up and more to the left, kind of drop on the inside. And unfortunately, that might be the worst place to do this, as Manderson's army is actually positioned very, very close to the ramp. Okay, I don't know how this is going to go. The worst case scenario here with this drop is he flies over the army and loses a bunch of things before they actually come out. Best case scenario is it drops completely, and he has a couple siege tanks in there. And if he can get the siege tanks down, he will probably decimate the army. He also might just end up boosting past a lot of these to get there. And here comes the drop. Actually dropped right in that. And thankfully for MrBailey, the reaction is pretty slow, so he's able to get into position. Army is able to fire back. And actually, yeah, that improvement in the army was enough. There we go. Cheat. MrBailey takes it 2-1. Good show match. Right, go ahead.